Olá, seja bem-vinda e seja bem-vindo ao Agroamérica, programa produzido em parceria com o Instituto Interamericano de Cooperação para a Agricultura, o ICA, aqui no canal Agro Mais. Falamos sobre boas práticas agrícolas que podem levar ao bem-estar rural e à produção sustentável e que podem ser reproduzidas nos 34 Estados-membros do hemisfério americano. Hoje, o nosso assunto é sobre a febre aftosa, doença que atinge cerca de 77% do rebanho global e atinge uma porcentagem mínima aqui na América do Sul. Segundo o meu entrevistado, essa doença hoje tem uma distinção que promove uma hierarquia entre áreas livres de febre aftosa com vacinação e sem vacinação. E segundo ele, é preciso erradicar esta distinção para promover maiores benefícios, tanto para o setor agropecuário quanto para a sociedade. Vamos entrar no assunto? Meu entrevistado é o Patrik Buholzer, que é diretor-executivo do Fórum Internacional de Doenças Animais Transmissíveis e Segurança Alimentar. Patrik, thanks so much for accepting our invitation. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So let's get into it. Foot and mouth disease, also known as FMD, today there exists this hierarchy between FMD-free zones with and without vaccination, and according to your articles, there needs to be an eradication of this hierarchy. What are the benefits that this can contribute to society, to the agro sector, as well as to food security around the world?
So, when we would treat the two statuses as equivalent, that would definitively increase food security as well as animal welfare on the other hand. So, the countries would not feel pushed to move to an FMD-free without vaccination status in the hope for better market access as well, and maybe even taking risk to do that. So, making those two statuses equivalent would really help to make that decision to stop vaccination for a country based on the epidemiological situation in the region and a sound risk assessment. And that should be the only rationale for doing that decision. So the food security part comes actually that we would have less outbreaks, and with that, we would not need to cull healthy animals to control an outbreak. And this is anyway, calling healthy animals just for the purpose of getting a preventable infectious disease like FMD under control is actually not accepted anymore by the public. We see that many, many times in many situations. It's just not accepted anymore. So we could actually vaccinate instead of culling, and that would be a much better approach. And it also would increase the food security because we're not wasting any protein by just culling animals due to incursion of FMD. And of course, it would also contribute to animal welfare. So overall, all countries would be benefit.
But when we're talking about this certain scenario, in looking at these FMD-free zones with and without vaccine in this new light, you're talking about a shift in understanding on how to deal with this kind of disease. Let's say, for example, in zones that are free of vaccines, how should we interpret the risks of having FMD in these areas? And what are maybe the technologies that allow for this paradigm shift? I think as one of the things that you've mentioned that needs to be done is a paradigm shift in order for us to engage in this new kind of idea.
So, maybe let me start with going a few years back. So this distinction has made sense in the past, but over the last decades, we have seen a significant improvement of the capacities and capabilities to control FMD. So this differentiation is actually no longer needed. So nowadays we have tools and capacities available to control FMD, to survey, and having measures in place if there is something. So we have high quality vaccines, potent vaccines. That is one important part of it. which significantly improved over the years. We do have specific reliable diagnostics, which are needed to distinguish between infected and vaccinated animals, and also to survey, to do surveillance programs and control programs. And with that all together, we have really a setting that allows to put those two statuses on the same level. And, when you say, okay, what does it mean for a country that is FMD free without vaccination? Actually gets also for them a bit more security, depending, of course, on where you are. But we have just seen it with the outbreak in Indonesia. It is a big threat for Australia. And Indonesia was also free without vaccination, but got an incursion because, in the region where they are, actually, there are a lot of countries around which have FMD. So maybe, and that's just pure speculation from my end, of course, but if they would have been free with vaccination, the impact of that outbreak would have been much less.
I understand. So when we're looking at also a global risk of having these diseases, spread out around, important agricultural products, I mean by especially livestock populations, there needs to be maintain the level of vaccination in order to maintain security around these populations. So is FMD-free zones without vaccination actually a higher risk in comparison to those regions with vaccination?
No, I mean, we cannot say it like that. It really depends on your personal situation, and that is what I also mentioned before, is that you need to do a sound risk assessment. You need to really investigate and see what is the risk of having an incursion of FMD, and also taking, and that's important, not only taking, your free zone or your country into account, but really going for a broader regional context. So you need to take the epidemiological situation of a region into consideration, and that is actually the trigger. So it's not that, FMD-free countries have a higher risk than FMD-free countries, and FMD-free countries without vaccination have a higher risk than FMD-free country with vaccination. That cannot be said like that. And it's definitely not also a call for, everybody should start vaccinating again. That's not the purpose of our initiative here. What we want to do is just that we not putting hurdles or pushing countries into a situation where they're taking unnecessary risk. Yeah, that is actually the purpose. So this consideration to stop vaccination should be really based on a sound risk assessment, on taking the epidemiological situation of the region into account, and then we can make that decision.
Fantastic. So looking at this perspective on risk assessments, how would TAFS Forum, you as a representative, recommend this to begin? How should countries begin to look at this risk assessment with a new protocol or new perspectives in order to look at FMD free with and without vaccinations as the same kind of hierarchy?
So, I think each country needs to undertake for themselves a risk assessment of their situation. So they need to see, okay, I'm in this and this region, these are my neighboring countries, this is the FMD situation in that region, and then moving forward. And the step is definitively, if they want to go for FMD free without vaccination for whatever reason, then they should really take time in having that FMD free with vaccination and being sure that they could move to the next step based on an epidemiological assessment, based on a risk assessment. And we have many countries which are doing really, really well with having FMD free zones or FMD free the whole country with vaccination, like Uruguay, for example, in South America. They're doing a lot of trading internationally with many different countries, a lot of countries that are free without vaccination. So they are accepting the meat. It's not considered any risk. So it is, from that perspective, anyway, already the same level, the FMD free with vaccination and without vaccination, So when we're going and putting those two levels, to these two FMD free without vaccination, FMD free with vaccination to the same level, we're just actually doing what is already done when it comes to bilateral trade, and it would give the countries much more security from many perspectives.
Understanding. Let's break down a little bit of what these many perspectives are. Let's start out with what are the advantages that this could bring for the producers of every single country in having annihilated these distinctions between FMD-free with and without vaccines. What can this contribute to the proper producers?
So for the producers, it would give also more stability, I would say, more security. Yeah, they could go and trade meat, of course. And here as well, independently, if you're free without or with vaccination, the negotiation about, trading meat products or other animal products is always a bilateral negotiation, which you need to do anyway. But it is not, it would not be an additional hurdle, which is put into the way, for trading. That would be a benefit for the farmers. And for me, the even more important one is that they would not need to go, or would not be pushed actually to go in that FMD free without vaccination status, maybe taking risk, or maybe, doing it in a situation where they're not 100% sure if that is really the most smartest idea. So having not that pressure, they really can do their decisions in a more decent way.
Mm-hmm. And how are the repercussions for this for the entire sector as a whole? When we're talking about the investments in vaccination, the investments in technology, looking at risk analysis, you're also talking about investing in certain technologies that also allow for you to observe livestock populations. So we're talking about traceability as in other technologies, is that correct?
Yeah, so first of all, we may need to say, both statuses, FMD free with or without vaccination, need to show that there is no virus circulation. Yeah, so both need to set up surveillance monitoring programs, need to make sure that there is no virus around. So that is actually for both the same. If you have, zoning where you have in a country a zone that is free without vaccination and free with vaccination, there, of course, it is important that you can distinguish those two populations all the time. That requires traceability, of course, and so that might be some extra effort, which is not always so easy to trace each animal 100%. But of course, your trading partner will expect that when you promise him meat from FMD-free zone with vaccination, that it is FMD-free zone without vaccination. So that adds on. Traceability, of course, is anyway an important tool to trace back if there would be something happen.
Patrik, we're going to go for a quick break right now. Para você que está nos acompanhando, fique por aí que o Agroamérica volta já a falar um pouco mais sobre essa questão tão interessante que é a distinção entre zonas livres de febre aftosa com vacinação e sem vacinação. Até já. Olá, o Agroamérica está de volta. Nós estamos falando sobre febre aftosa e a distinção entre zonas livres de febre aftosa com e sem vacinação. Em retorno aqui, eu falo com Patrik Buholzer, que é diretor-executivo do TAFS Forum, também conhecido como o Fórum Internacional de Doenças Animais Transmissíveis e Segurança Alimentar. Patrik, as we were talking a little bit about the distinction and the advantages between eradicating this distinction between FMD-free zones with and without vaccines, how does the international market today treat this distinction? Is there still an advantage to having FMD-free zones with and without vaccination?
So, I mean, trading is always on a bilateral agreement between the two countries. And what we see actually, yes, of course, I mean, first of all, yes, there's still a distinction because we have from WOHA, from the World Organization of Animal Health, this progressive control pathway for foot and mouth disease, which clearly distinguish the two statuses, FMD-free with and without vaccination. But from a trading perspective, what we see is, and there are many examples, also from South America, like Uruguay and also Brazil. There is trade from countries or zones that are FMD-free with vaccination into countries which are FMD-free without vaccination. So the trading has not really a lot of restriction anymore. The main advantage to put those two statuses on the same level is actually to get more stability, more security for the different countries, for the farmers, and actually for the global food and meat supply.
So we're talking about food security at a very epidemiological controlling environment. And this is very interesting because TAFS also has done a lot of work with different producers around the world, and you've had also a few seminars in Latin America. And I'd like to know, how has this proposition been received by associations and by producers within the region?
So generally, we're getting a lot of positive resonance to the paradigm shift. People understand that this shift makes sense. I mean, from a scientific perspective, and also, as we said, from a food security, animal health, animal welfare perspective. So they actually in favor of that. They see that it gives them the security, the stability they need. So we got actually really positive feedback. Of course, it is always individual for each country in which stage they are, what situation they have. There is some questions how to get those statuses or what would it mean in the specific. But that's always the case.
Understandably. Is there also, what are the main challenges that you see the world still faces in order to break down this distinction? I mean, when we're talking about food security, we're also talking about the prices of food, that can be more accessible for the population. We're talking about security for the producer who needs to make sure that his livestock population is safe so he doesn't have to sacrifice any animals. And we're also talking about an international market that is globalized, that is pertaining to a dependency between fertilizers, between vaccinations, and the distribution of all these resources. Do we still need to look at this in a better light?
We know, I mean, latest since COVID probably, that the world is really interconnected. Yeah. And also, I mean, if we look at avian influenza, what's currently happened there is that, yes, everything is connected and we cannot look at things isolated anymore. So when we going in the direction saying, okay, what would be the best solution is really, I mean, would be actually not putting countries or pushing countries into a situation where they doing moving to a status just because of the status, and that's actually at the moment, in my opinion, a bit the case, just because we have that FMD-free without vaccination still there as the highest to achievable standard or level, people think, okay, we need to go there. It's probably in the nature of humans anyway, to try to achieve the top level. But this comes with some costs or potential risks, and I think we need to be nowadays with the global situation we have, with the pressure we have as well on protein sources, on being efficient in producing, to be able to feed actually a growing population, and that under clean, climate friendly conditions. We need to come up with new ideas and stop doing things just because they were there for a long time. We need to overcome those things and accepting and doing the right things and moving on.
What are your recommendations in terms of private and public sector, the private and public sector take on this paradigm shift? I mean, there's different roles, there's different money available in order for these challenges to be tackled. What do you think each one of those needs to do today in order to improve this food security, improve vaccination, and furthermore, enhance this paradigm shift?
So for me, the important thing is that they talk to each other. And actually TAFS is also, supporting and actually promoting that, so that TAFS is bringing, different stakeholders together, from private industry, from government, from science, from different places all over the world to talk, to sit together and really openly talk about the thing, about what matters, and not about, sound, not about other noises around that. So that they really can focus on the facts and, being open, talking about what are the concerns and how we can overcome the concerns. It's really, we need to start working together even more, need to get those towards those challenges together, take them up together and finding innovative, good solution. And that's not only true for FMD free with vaccination or without vaccination. That's true for many other aspects as well.
Fantastic. Now, Patrik, recently you were in South Korea, not too long ago, just in Seoul, administering also a seminar about FMD. I would like to know, how was the seminar? How is this discussion also being received by the Asian community, the Asian producing countries, also countries that are increasing their consumption, their importation of agricultural products, let's say from Latin America, as in other parts of the world, and that have really big dependency as well on the livestock production in this part of the world. How was this discussion received, and how are they also administering this type of challenge?
So the meeting in Seoul was very well received. So we had a great meeting. So there was a lot of good discussion, engaging of the people. We had also there different stakeholders. So we had on one hand different countries, of course, from Asia present, which presented also about the current situation with FMD. We had representatives from international organization, from FAO and WOHA, who also contributed. We had, industry representatives from vaccine companies and diagnostics, etc. So we really brought together everybody. And so we had an open and good discussion, and really a lot of engagement and a lot of open and honest discussion about the whole situation. Of course, when we go to Asia, the situation is a bit different than what we have had in South America. I mean, South America, most countries are free with vaccination since many years, so they have quite a history of having the disease under control. There are no outbreaks since many years, or most of the South American countries do not have an FMD outbreak for many years. Whereas, of course, in Asia, it's still present. We have a lot of countries that have endemic situation with FMD or just had recent outbreaks, like South Korea, which was just unfortunately actually getting an FMD incursion like 2 weeks before we had the meeting, and they were free with vaccination for quite some time. Fortunately, the outbreak could be condemned quite fast, and it was not further spreading, probably also due to the fact that they are vaccinating.
Fantastic. So there is still a lot of work to do, but it's a global effort in order to not only distinguish, at least eradicate the distinction between FMD-free zones with and without vaccines. But furthermore, what you're saying to us is that it's important to eradicate this distinction in order to give further food security and further epidemiological security for livestock populations around the world. So Patrik, could you give us just a last message in order for us to close up our program?
Sure. So for me, it's really time to recognize the two statuses as equivalent. We have the right tools, we have the capabilities to control FMD. We have vaccines, we have diagnostics, we have appropriate surveillance and monitoring programs. So we really need to come also to eradicate FMD. When we stop distinguishing these two statuses, it will help. It will support that higher goal of getting that disease eradicated. Of course, it helps for food security, for animal welfare, for really making the whole market more stable, giving security and consistency to the farmers and producers. So if we would summarize what the main point, why that paradigm shift makes sense, it would be meat and meat products of vaccinated animals are safe. We know that countries are trading since many years with countries that are free with vaccination. And so there is no doubt on that. We would increase food security by not having unnecessary culling of animals, of healthy animals, so that is food security. Animal welfare would help for when it comes to public concern, would make a clear difference there. And also, it would help, as said before, stop or reduce, let's say this way, reduce the risk of spreading of the virus, not giving the virus a chance to infect animals, ramping up actually, and then spreading all over the world due to this interconnected world we're living in. So vaccination against FMD is like an insurance policy, and making those two statuses equivalent is a benefit for everybody, for countries that are currently free without vaccination, for countries that are free with vaccination, and of countries which are moving up in the PCP towards those statuses FMD free. So to close it, I would say FMD free needs to be FMD free.
Fantastic. With or without vaccination. Perfect. Patrik
With or
Buholzer.
without vaccination, exactly.
Yes, surely. Well, technology is there for that, and food security is at the top of the priority list. Thank you so much for your time, for your presence here at Agro-America, and I hope to have you here again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bom, é isso. Eu conversei com Patrik Buholzer, que é diretor-executivo do Fórum Internacional de Doenças Animais Transmissíveis e Segurança Alimentar, falando sobre uma discussão pertinente sobre a eliminação da hierarquia entre zonas livres de febre aftosa com e sem vacinação. O Agro-América fica por aqui e eu te aguardo no nosso próximo programa. Até já!